Welcome back, everyone, to Cat's Eye on the Future, the show where we will look at the most likely energies coming into the world this week that may be affecting both current events and your personal future. But first, let's get to the legal disclaimers out of the way. All readings on this show are done for entertainment purposes only, but like any form of entertainment, you can use them as one source of information when making your very own personal decisions. Now that that's out of the way, let's take a quick review of last week's card projections, and I'm going to include a bit from the Friday, June 7th to 9th weekend blog reading as well, because I think it also played a powerful role in what occurred during the past week. Okay, so what were we looking at a week ago? We had the cards, peace, friendship, the tree, the voyage, never, or the raven card, and Nauthies, desperation, need, and the rune Iwaj, yew tree, combined into one of those readings where the last card upends nearly everything that went before, making the reading darker and more difficult than it would have been to interpret otherwise. The combination of the raven with the other cards, such as friendship, looked like something that was going to go forward, but suddenly went off in a different direction, or possibly never happened. And that something really desperate was going to affect the world tree, because we got the tree image twice, and in the Norse Germanic cosmology of the world tree is what holds all the universes of the 9 worlds together. So, well, we would have expected a lowering of the sort of cosmic style energy, especially space-based events like meteors and all of the stars things we had. These things wouldn't go away entirely, but I expected that much of the news would likely be focused on geopolitics, largely negative stuff, with international friendships and treaties and alliances threatened, and some things possibly really changing from the way they'd been before. I also noticed that in the Nauthies rune, the need fire, there was a chance of continued bad forest fires, which sadly has proved to be the case. Before briefly reviewing a few more headlines, I want to touch on last weekend's June 7th to 9th blog reading, which you can find at Melodi Psychic Readings homepage by clicking on Card of the Day and just checking on the reading for the Card of the Day weekend edition for those dates. There you will see the full weekend reading of the Libido, the Stranger, the Cave, and Destruction cards, along with the Ruse Dave's Othala or Homeland, and Elhaj or Algies, Moose or Protection. This combination, like the audio reading, also made for a very tricky attempt to try to understand it. This was a second reading during the same time period where a single card, in this case Destruction, tended to color and darken the entire reading projection. But the most important images I want to touch on here from that reading, noting that in the past, even before I had this radio show, my readers had noticed that the weekend cards, and to some degree Monday's cards, often touch on important overall energies or topics that are going to come up in the week ahead. So last Friday what we had was the Stranger, the Cave, Destruction, Othala Homeland, and Algies, Protection or the Security Rune. This reading was done just before the remarkable NSA spying scandal information began to be leaked by a previously unknown young man named Edward Snowden. And depending on your point of view, definitely concerned threats to the security of the homeland, either from possible terror attacks because of the exposure of the information, or threats to the personal security of U.S. and world citizens being unknowingly spied upon by the same agencies. The Cave card could either be the depression, withdrawal caused by the agencies exposed, including those corporations and businesses that were caught going along for the ride, or that of the population stunned and wanting a safe place to hide from the intrusions into their lives. This destruction of the homeland security is also a very powerful image because it could mean perhaps the actual U.S. agency of that name may be ending or morphed into something else under a new name. Or it could mean the entire new voyage we saw last week in the topic, the voyage forward for the show, or change of direction we were seeing in the all over reading is prompted by the stranger. And this may lead to the destruction of actual security of the homeland in one way or another. We're not quite sure how it might do that yet, but there definitely is a threat there. Much of the past week's blog reading, which again you could go back and read all of them at my website for the past week, just seem to continue on about the same theme, along with some strong hints that broken friendships and doomed alliances, busted unions, or problems with unions of all sorts may disrupt the peace and lead to even more situations that are either never going to end or never going to end as expected. Woo, well, that was rather a long-winded review. I promise not all shows will take that much review time. But this week, because of the stunning pinpointing of the stranger, tipping point, and the amazing change in the flow of media focus onto the world of human affairs, from more cosmic natural disasters, stars-themed ones, which we saw for several weeks there in the readings, to changing forward to these human event-caused themes, I thought it a good idea to take the time to do so. Note, I don't think we saw the stars card once in any of the readings for the past week, which, given how prevalent it was before then, is simply amazing. Anyway, so with the background of the strange new world and possible mismatched alliances coming into play, let's take a look at this week's cards to see if these trends are likely to continue, or if, having briefly taken center stage, they are about to be replaced by something entirely different yet again. So once again, we ask the question, what are the most important energies affecting the world for the next 7 days? That's Monday, June 17th to Sunday, June 23rd, 2013, that are affecting both current events and individuals. Now, if you want to follow along with the cards, you can again go back to my website at melodipsychicreadings.com, that's Melody with an I, psychicreadings.com, one word, and click on the Cat's Eye Show pages, and click down for the page for this week's show. I'll also be describing the cards for folks without internet access while listening. First, just looking at this combination of cards and runes, I can see right away that not only have the energies continued to focus on the geopolitical as opposed to the cosmic, these human-caused events are even stronger, if anything, than they were last week. Hard to imagine, I know, but that is sort of what they look like. So first we have the fortune card. Remember, the first card in a reading often sets the basic focus for the subject of the reading. The fortune card shows a man holding a lantern and going up twisting staircases where there is a box of treasure at the top. As he continues on his path along the staircase, he is likely to find the treasure eventually, if he doesn't go backwards or fall off the stairs. The fortune card is very often a positive card in a reading, suggesting that quests for both spiritual and physical fortune for the individual, but it can also mean, particularly in these current event readings, that great fortunes, money, inheritances, currencies, precious metals, and even old money is involved here. So we have that as kind of a focus of economics overall for this. Next we have the Father card. This is a strong card, with a handsome and masculine Stone Age father teaching his son to shoot a bow and arrow and showing him the direction he should shoot it. Hopefully, he is teaching his son to provide food for his family. But he could also be training his son to be a warrior, either a defensive warrior to protect the tribe, or perhaps to increase the tribe's territory by warfare. The thing is, we don't know from just looking at this card, because all the options are there, just waiting to be discovered. Now, we get the weird card, and why there are 6 rather than the usual 5 cards in this reading. After I had laid out all my cards, had them flat down, I realized it was actually a card stuck to the back of the Father card. And when I removed it and set it down, it proved to be the Beast, which is another one of those cards that, can change the energy around the card just before and just after, and almost always in a negative way. The Beast card pictures a wild, red, angry dragon slinking out from behind a closed door and getting ready to strike. It represents the wild, difficult, untamed, often angry, repressed emotions we all have inside of us. In a relationship reading, it almost always suggests jealousy, envy, or rage. In a current events reading, it could be any of those or any of the other deep, darker emotions that civilized humans try to pretend we don't have. Certainly not as modern people, tribes, or nations, but if we ignored, they tend to rear their ugly heads when you least expect them. These emotions can cause suffering, battles, despair, loathing, racism, slavery, inequality, destruction, and yes, even genocide, if not confronted and dealt with by some other means. The beast in a personal reading is everyone's inner 2-year-old self having a tantrum, a really bad tantrum. In a current events reading, it suggests an important person or an entire people, like a city or a tribe, a nation, or even a union or a block of nations, is having a big collective tantrum. Combined with the Father card, this is worrying for obvious reasons. The Father with the beast behind him suggests a rather Freudian duality of the consciousness, or a desired view of the Father as protector and teacher versus the unconscious or unwanted view as the Father as enemy or competitor. I might have expected to see this combination around the time when the Catholic Church's child abuse scandals were breaking. The fathers who should have been protectors and teachers turning out to be destructive beasts instead. On a large scale, this could refer to any of the governmental shocks that have been released lately, the ongoing revelations of the dark side of the government that should have been protecting and helping, and there may be more to come. It may be worth noting that one of the less former titles of Tsar was Little Father, and the uncrowned Little Father of Russia today is not taking well to the developing American presence in Syria. So then we get the skills card, which in this deck is matched to the Father's card. Here on the skills card, we have the same bow and arrow the father is using to teach the boy, or perhaps his own grown-up set laid on the ground. It's ready to pick up and use this whenever he needs it. This is usually a good and powerful card, suggesting that someone has the skills or is learning the skills they need to perform a task. Given the father plus beast combination, you do have to wonder just what skills that child is being taught, and or what skills are being flagged in the reading. It may also suggest that the skills in question, the skills of technology and warfare, could be used by the father against the son if he becomes the beast. It becomes even more ominous when the death card shows up next. In this deck, the death card is seen as a lovely but dark Stone Age burial mound, perhaps of the sort both the father and the boy would look forward to taking their rest between the time of their deaths and their expected rebirth. The card has blood-red flowers surrounding the open door of the cairn, and a hill of grass on top of it. The death card in this deck usually does not mean that someone is actually going to die, but that something or a situation meets a final ending. This may be what the card is talking about here. Given the previous week's readings, that could be the final death of a treaty, a friendship, an alliance, or a union, at least one that gets off track somehow and does not move as expected. But given the other cards so far, death of people, tribes, nations, governments, is not out of the question either. And living myself as I do in the European Union, that would be something I would be watching very closely in terms of where I live. But remember that all the cards can also be symbolic. Hopefully, we are simply talking about a situation or a government or an alliance like the EU or even say the United Nations that may need to change or be replaced, and doing so in a peaceful manner. But I have to say, the cards are not really encouraging for this. At least not so far. So what do we have for that sixth card? Why, our old friend, the Raven. Back to bring us a message that something is either never likely to happen or will take so long to happen it will seem like it's never going to take place. The Raven is also the Dark Messenger card, again associated with the Norse god Odin, who in addition to being the god most likely in charge of sneaky politicians, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, is also more famously a god of death and a god of battles. If your hair is now starting to stand a bit on end, I'll understand, and you may want to take a pause now. Just, hit the pause button on the YouTube or the podcast and get yourself a nice hot cup of tea before you go forward and we discuss the runes. Okay, now that you've gotten that cup of tea, or even if you haven't, we now carefully tread tiptoe forward to the runes that will sum up this reading. What we have here are a combination of Isa, which is ice or something frozen, and Surisaj, which is usually a giant or a thorn or a prick. So we have a situation that is for the moment stuck, refuses to go forward, and perhaps is frozen in some way. This could also indicate actual frozen water or a frozen stuck weather pattern, and those things will probably be touched on too, but it combines with the giant, powerful, awe-inspiring forces of the Thyrsus, the ancient Norse giants, which in addition to being the powerful forces of nature, can also be, again, those powers of the beast, of the deep, dark emotions, of huge things looming out there in the background. So in addition to its giant associations, the Surisaj rune is also sometimes called a thorn, and a prickly rose, something that can prick and burst a bubble. In other words, a very large, giant danger that things seem stuck for a while. Something is likely to have a powerful prick or hit to it from that thorn bush, and the ice or the stuck situation is likely to come unglued. However, I think the message of the Raven card this week and last week is, never is anything going to go forward as planned or directed. So if somebody thinks they're actually in charge of this pricking, if this is actually a person or a group of people trying to manipulate things and trying to break something that has been together before or melt something that has been iced over, they may be in for a big surprise. Because what I'm getting from this reading, and I'm going to go out on the sort of limb I usually try to avoid here, is when I'm doing general readings, is there is a very strong energy push for a conflict or war on the part of those who either have or think they will make fortunes from it. The training of young men has begun, and also young women these days. The beast is just behind the father doing the training. The skills are there, and death awaits the fallen in the Death Raven Odin card. If, and this is a big if, this conflict does explode, it will likely be after a period of stasis, icing over of friendships, or an impulse when something, possibly fire-related or explosive, but could just even be angry words, pricks and lights the fire, which sets them off. Or the other high probability is it something that was already silent, perhaps frozen for a long time, buried, quiet, forgotten about, suddenly and catastrophically shatters and melts with great force. Well, this could be a natural disaster, the situation just then becoming all or part of an excuse for the upcoming conflict. It almost certainly feels more man-made or man-created, except there is some of the natural elements in the Thirst giants, Thyrsus often being seen as the powerful and inhuman forces of nature. So you could get a touch of that sometimes in the beast as well, for example, raging waters or exploding volcanoes. But as I mentioned before, giants and Thyrsus can also be images of a primordial age as the raging beast inside. So even the giants here could be man-inspired or created. The other message of the Raven card is, beware, this will never end well. But mostly, it feels like this man-created mess, where a situation that has been in stasis or hidden under the ice for a long time is about to be disrupted by an explosion of some sort. But this entire mess does not actually have to happen. It's not like it's fated. It just means that it's extremely and highly likely. And it's very likely to happen soon if other decisions are not made. If current trends, situations, decisions, organizations keep going the way that they're going, this is the most likely outcome. I hope this reading is wrong. I would be delighted to be sitting here next week, laughing with everyone, while we realize this actually was about some wealthy, famous celebrity father who has a tantrum and kills their career, which they'll never get back. But while this sort of thing, too, is likely with this energy, the unerring reality of watching actual current events as well as cards does not give me a good feeling about this. But then, neither does press reports this morning, Saturday, June 15th, while I'm recording this, of U.S. troops being rumored to be already sitting on the borders of Syria give me a great deal of comfort either. Possible international nightmares aside, for individuals, this can be a good time period in many ways. The perfect time for working on spiritual and material fortunes, learning skills, connecting with your father, especially on Father's Day, and generally just kind of celebrating the paternal side of things. In our society, we often criticize paternal things because in the past, sometimes that energy was sort of overawed or overused or even overemphasized to the neglect of the maternal. But the protective father, the image of the father as actual security, as actual protector, is very important and something we can all meditate on. The death card can also be a positive influence. It's a great time to remember both people who have actually departed that we loved, and also for making life decisions and choices that certain things need to end. Bad habits, destructive relationship, but also weeds in your garden, dust bunnies under the bed. There are all sorts of things that's good to either stop doing or clean up after, and this energy is perfect for that. The Isis-Thurisaj combination is a little trickier, because many people are just going to feel like, even with everything else seeming to move around them very quickly, they themselves may feel rather stuck. Or certain things in their life just feel like they're stuck and they're not going to change. The ice rune almost always indicates a period when things frozen and like there's just never room, sort of like that never card. They're just never going to move. And that was made worse by the never card next to it. However, the Thurisaj rune suggests that when things do start moving, they will smash forward quickly and faster than you are really ready for. So definitely a strong push-pull in that regard, which may also signal that another push-pull tipping point is coming in the energies fairly soon. But most of the cards so far are just continuing in last week's pattern. So at least I think for this week outward, we're going to have just this continual kind of human building, kind of unfriendly energy way out there, but not nearly so bad when it comes down to the personal. So to sum up, a rather dicey time for current events, a time when money, wealth, and fortune are going to be a major factor in upsetting the world apple cart in some way. But since there isn't much the individual can do about that, either the secrets that have now been revealed last week about the NSA spying scandal, or this week's wars and rumors of wars, the best thing we can all do is look towards gathering our own personal fortunes and skills. Work on controlling our own inner beast, who is likely to want to break out more this week. That's something to watch out for, both in yourself and being kind with your partners and your colleagues at work, because everybody's going to be on a bit of a hair trigger. There's going to be a much higher tendency to want to just react when confronted with something, as opposed to what is really needed, which is a soft word and a step back. So practice that. And your friends may not know about this energy, but you do. So you're the one, you can somewhat control the situation by taking charge and just trying to stay calm, even if everybody else is expressing their inner 2-year-old. And you can concentrate on both home and spiritual life, including the afterlife. Good period to get educated and do your best to try to stay safe. One thing the cards and runes teach us is for the individual, it isn't what is going on internationally that is your most important issue. It's how that situation is likely to affect you and your family, if at all. That the most important thing for you to determine is what places are likely to be safe for you and your family, and where, as an individual, the universe and the divine as you perceive it wishes you to be. Now, next week, I'll be reading a bit early, probably on Friday, because I'll be speaking in London at the Oxfordshire Northern Traditions Moot there the following weekend. So I won't be entirely sure how the entire week plays out before the next reading, which can be fun. But I'll also try to do a bi-weekly reading for 2 weeks, because I'll also be gone that entire weekly period. But instead of not doing any show at all for the second week, I'm going to try to pre-record a topical show, which will look either at an interesting current events question, or talk about an interesting topic that I think you all might find interesting, but isn't necessarily tied to a particular period of time. So if you have questions or topics you would like to see used on these sorts of topical shows, please write and let me know. Just write show topic in the subject line so I know what you're talking about. You can send those to Melodi Reader, one word, Melodi with an I, reader @gmail.com, and just put the show topic in the subject line. That said, we now break for a moment before coming back to the really fun part of our show, the part where I look at a personal reading sent in by a listener, and we all take a look at it, and I help try to explain it. So stay tuned. Be right back. All the music used on the show today is from musicalley.com, your source for free-to-air music for podcasts. The artists place their music up for free to air in hopes that you, the listener, will visit their site and purchase some of their outstanding musical offerings. So after the show, why not visit musicalley.com and explore their extensive playlist?
And she sings, she goes home in the evening with the dew all on her wings.
Do you have questions? The cards have answers. If you would like a personal reading with Melodi, just go to my website, melodipsychicreadings.com. That's Melodi with an I, psychicreadings.com, for information, or email me at melodireader@gmail.com. Readings are available using Skype, phone, email, or even in person if you are lucky to live in Ireland. Why not find out what special messages the cards have just for you and book a private reading today?
See me from beneath the sea, the best in all of Ireland. See me from beneath the sea, the best in all of Ireland.
Welcome back to part 2 of Cat's Eye on the Future, the part of the show where each week we take a personal question from you, the listener, and do an on-air reading around their question. If you would like your question considered for the show, just send me an email at melodireader@gmail.com and I'll put you in the queue for consideration. I can't promise to use all your questions on the show, but I can promise to read them over and consider them. Anyway, today's question comes from the Netherlands, and I've decided to call the questioner Dutchman. Because, while I'm willing to reveal in general where he lives, because that is pertinent to the reading, I like to give out as little personal information about people asking the question that I'm reading for on the air as possible, so that if you send your question in, you'll feel totally safe when sending them, that you won't be exposed on the air. Now, Dutchman has another very topically important question. I just realized it was very time sensitive when I was looking over my question notes. So even though we've looked at the idea of unemployment before, I decided to do it again. For one thing, this isn't a topic I'm going to see going away anytime soon, sadly. And for another, this time the questioner is asking about his family's employment situation, but also if the answer might reflect on the state of his nation, both in terms of a possible global coastal event or sea level rise, and I suspect and or economically in the near future. That's really 3 questions, but since they sort of go together, I'm going to use the question as written, concentrating on the employment situation for both Dutchman and his wife, but I will also read anything that I think may reflect issues with the Netherlands itself in terms of this reading. In a full personal reading, I would instead read separately for Dutchman, separately for his wife, and separately for the nation as a whole, because they are three different things and two different people, and we'd want to know exactly which thing was going to affect which one of them. But instead, we're just going to leave the question as written and see what we get. Now, some other time, it might be fun to do a non-time sensitive topical show on either the possible effects of global sea rise or even just how the Netherlands itself might be doing during a certain period of time. But for now, we're just going to see how the cards touch on that subject. So, what is the question? The question is, will my wife and me be employed in August 2013? I live in the Netherlands and am currently employed in healthcare. My wife is unemployed at the moment. I tried to phrase the question so that it would tell us something about the general state of affairs over here in the Netherlands as well. Global coastal event pending, or I put in the economic stuff myself actually because I thought that it might be interesting to see just what the cards flag. So I did tweak with the question a little bit, Dutchman. I hope that's okay. And then he says, hope to hear from you, which he is right now. So, now if you would like to follow along at home by viewing the cards, just go back to the page with the cards for episode 5, and they'll be down below the ones for the general reading that we already looked at. It'll say Dutchman's reading, and for everybody else, I'll continue to describe the cards as best I can as we go along. Now, the first thing I notice about this reading, when I just look it over, is that it contains some good news and some not so good news, both for Dutchman and his family, and also probably for the Netherlands as a whole. But the encouraging thing is that we have two rather positive energies, one at the start of the reading and the other at the end. That sort of frames things in a more hopeful light. So just as all those negative cards in the current events readings the last 2 weeks made those readings darker, the positive cards and runes in this reading help soften some of the more negative aspects in this one. But now let's get into some more detail before I ramble on any further. First, we have the Now card. The Now card is really appropriate for this reading, not only because we are reading for right now, with August only a month away, but because it is also a summer-fall card. A card with a picture of a bountiful harvest being gathered by a diligent worker, someone like I'm sure Dutchman is, and his wife wishes she could be again. So we have both the aspects of the energies right now and employment in this reading. So we can be reassured the cards are actually answering the question asked. Sometimes the cards don't do this, but we'll save that and cover that topic another time, probably on one of our non-time linked shows. The second card is the body, otherwise known to some of my clients in my personal reading practice as the creepy card. Now, my husband, the medical student, doesn't see why anyone would find this part creepy, but most non-medical people find the image of a nude, partially dissected human body standing up forcefully to be just a bit creepy. The fact that similar drawings have been in medical textbooks for hundreds of years is beside the point. For the record, I also find the card a bit creepy, but I also understand it is not intended to be read that way. Instead, the body card represents both personal health and the physical material world. I think in this case of the three-way reading, that both symbols are touched on here. Well, I cannot do health readings for legal reasons. I can suggest that there may be a health issue coming up with either Dutchman or his wife could cause some difficulty in the employment area. This might not even be their own issue, but it could be someone that affects them. If either of them, or someone they love, seems to have a health issue, they should go immediately to the doctor and get it seen to right away. This is advice I always give clients when this card comes up, even when I think, as in this case, the more likely explanation is the material world in which the body resides, rather than the health of the body itself. Now, why do I say that? I think the body card is suggesting there are blockages fulfilling dreams. Dreams of full employment, aspirations of getting somewhere, hidden gems of creativity that are just waiting to burst forth on the part of both Dutchman or his bride, but they are temporarily being blocked on either side by two explanations. One of them is that body card. The moon card represent the dreams and the creativity and the things welling up from the depths existing in that non-material realm. And what lies next to it? On the other side of this strong desire to create, invent, express hidden talents comes the money card, which would usually be a really great card. Exactly what you'd want to see here. Oh yes, the material world leads the moon, and the world of the unknown and the unseen leads to money. Except we kept reading, and the next card is, with a heavy heart, I have to say, the prison card. So, because of this combination, and with the prison card usually signifying being sort of trapped, stuck, locked in for a while, I have to say that it looks unlikely that both Dutchman and his wife will be employed as soon as August 2013. But since we didn't separate out the people involved, we can't sure how this all actually falls out. It could be that things are simply going to remain as they are. That's probably the most likely. It could be the Dutchman will also lose his job and money become an even bigger issue or a trap. It could be that Dutchman loses his job, but his wife finds one. Or even that both of them are employed, aka his wife gets a job, but not in a job they really want or fulfills their dreams. It's just going to be something to make money, and it's going to feel kind of entrapped. Whatever happens, it likely seems the situation's going to go on at least a little while longer. However, after the rather mixed cards, we get a couple of really positive rune staves, which is great because the runes tend to flow in a more archaic fashion and are not nearly as bound by time and space as the cards are. Therefore, they suggest good energies that are acting right now, but also bode well for the future. The two runes are Elhaj, Elk, Protection, Security, and Iwaj, the Yew Tree, the World Tree. Well, all runes and cards have some positive and some negative aspects. I really like this combination of protection and divine guidance, which this rune also has. If you look at it, it looks like antlers, but it can also look like a person with their hands raised towards the heavens, invoking either protection or perhaps prayer. So you combine this with an evergreen tree that in Europe lived so long that it became a symbol for everlasting life, and you have a couple of really good images here. I mean, of course, there are other ways these could be read, with Elhaj also representing a strong animal, one who has no natural predators after adulthood and can tend to run kind of wild. If you've ever lived in Sweden like I have, you know that elk, or what Americans call a moose, are likely just to decide to try to ram into your car because they're not used to avoiding anything because nothing that moves is bigger than they are or a threat. And they could really do damage to your windshield. And of course, the yew tree, being one planted in graveyards and sometimes poisoning people who sit on it too long, also has that kind of, it's got that other sort of sting in the tail there. But I'm not really picking up any of these negative aspects. Not the one of running amok kind of and running into things, or sitting around too long and breathing bad air. I think, although Dutchman and his wife may be having this kind of period of entrapment, I think they've got a really good, warm feeling of protection around them. And they are pretty much secure in their long-term life plan because they're guarded by the protection of the elk. And that deep roots and steadfastness of the yew tree are both signs that they're likely to weather this storm. Yew trees last 500, sometimes even 1,000 years because their roots go so deep down in the ground and they're so tall, and they just don't tend to fall over until they run their natural lifespan, which is really, really long. But it is likely to take longer than just the months in July of August of this year. I'm really sorry to say that, but that really looks like the case. Again, hope I'm wrong. Would love to get an email next week and read on the air that things have changed. However, so far, that's what it looks like. Finally, in an overall sense, I think this reading also bodes well for the Netherlands as a whole, at least in terms of protection from the rising waters of the sea, also seen in the moon card. Though difficulties with both material reality and money, especially I think the current EU-wide recession because of that now card, is creating a temporary trap in terms of taking some really needed and vital steps toward continuing that protection that the Elhaj rune so desperately wants to provide. But again, long term, the Netherlands is one of those countries that in the ancient days revered the Irminsul, or the world tree, often seen as a Yule tree, and that was the cosmic tree that held all 9 worlds of the Germanic cosmology, including Middlegarth, or Middle Earth, which will sound familiar to friends of Tolkien for a very good reason, because he took it from this same cosmology, and this is where humans and mankind dwells. So, the whole tree of all the universe is basically held together here. So that's a powerful hint that now the world tree in the Netherlands is still protecting the Netherlands, although there may be a danger from the sea yet to come. We see that on the moon card with the waves under the moon and the tides moving over time. But again, probably not as quickly as August 2013. I don't think they have a lot to worry about right now. The real issue is that more mundane problem of money and the practicalities of repairing and building infrastructure like dams and water drainage to ensure such safety for future years and future generations. That pretty much sums up this reading. One of the reasons I did it this way, rather than the usual just pick one of the 3 questions and run with it, is because I wanted to show that yes, sometimes this can work, but you are still likely to get better results if you ask a more specific question. As it stands, we know that overall, someone in Dutchman's family is likely to have money problems a month from now, but we don't know for sure how, why, or which one. We also get a sense of both problems and protection for the Netherlands, but we might have been even clearer direction-wise if we had asked what that question was on its own. Though I have to say, I think the cards did an amazing job of answering all 3 questions as well as they did. As a reader, it is important to learn how to sometimes deal with these multiple questions, because in emergencies, or if a private client is in a state of high emotional distress, they may only have you go on. They may simply not be able to break things down for you the way you would like to. And so you just go on and you do your best. So speaking of the best, I'm wishing all the best to Dutchman and his wife, and I hope their period of prison is over very soon, like now. And that another good thing about the psychic timestamp of that now card is it suggests the situation is for now or the near future, not really long term. So I'm inviting Dutchman to check back in 6 months and let me know how things are going, and we'll see about doing another air reading so we can all follow up if he's willing. As always, this reading is merely a tool that he and others can use to make wise and personal choices. But like all jobs, sometimes a few extra tools never hurts. So getting a second opinion from another reader, especially someone with a different specialty like astrology or numerology, something that's a totally different focus, talking to someone you trust, going online to do your own research, self-education, is always advised before making any major life decision. However, I think that about winds down this slightly longer and somewhat more intense show today, especially the first half. And I look forward to seeing everyone next time, this time with a bi-weekly reading, hopefully followed by a topical show for the time I'm away. Hope everyone enjoys the new YouTube streaming options for the show. Everyone at Time Monk Radio Network worked very hard to make this happen. Be sure to check out our website and listen to our other wonderful programs and interviews you can find at www.timemonkradio.com. Shows like Expedient Means, where you can join Lian Wei as he brings mysticism of the Eastern arts into easily understood terms that can be put into an everyday practical approach. Or, tomorrow night on Tuesday, join Plain for the Plain Truth, where your host and his guests promise to leave no conspiratorial stone unturned, no mainstream propaganda will go unchallenged, and all existing reality boxes will be shattered. I can't wait for that one. But for now, it's time for this Cat's Eye on the Future to close, and until we meet again, take care and see you soon.
But here's a health to the company and one to my lass.
You have been listening to Cat's Eye on the Future, the show where we take a glimpse of the energies coming soon into your world and into your future. Be sure to join us again next time when we explore another chapter of Cat's Eye on the Future.
Again. But here's a health to the company and one to my last. Let's drink